in with political reporter Rick Albin, who went one-on-one with the vice president today. Rick.
Yes, Susan and Brian, the vice president talked to a few hundred supporters about why he says 4 more years of the Trump-Pence ticket would be good for them, from jobs to religious freedoms, cutting regulations, and supporting the military and law enforcement. He made his case to, once again, try and put Michigan in the win column, as they did in 2016. And by the way, that was the first time a Republican ticket had taken the state since 1988. Later, I asked the vice president about the revelation that a number of people were planning to kidnap Governor Gretchen Whitmer, and her remarks about the president's comments that she says equated to a call to action. First, I'll remind you of what the governor had to say last Thursday after the plot was announced, and then the vice president's response to my question.
Our head of state has spent the past 7 months denying science, ignoring his own health experts, stoking distrust, fomenting anger, and giving comfort to those who spread fear and hatred and division. Just last week, the President of the United States stood before the American people and refused to condemn white supremacists and hate groups like these 2 Michigan militia groups. Stand back and stand by, he told them. Stand back and stand by. Hate groups heard the president's words not as a rebuke, but as a rallying cry, as a call to action.
I think it's unfortunate the governor of Michigan would take the opportunity of what was a great success for law enforcement and for the FBI and use that to make some political point. These are anti-government militia people, people that have actually opposed President Trump, and I think as I said, I think it's unfortunate the governor used the opportunity of what is a great story for law enforcement and for the Justice Department to try and score political points against the president during an election season. I think the American people can be confident that we're going to stand strong against any of those who would bring violence to our streets, those that would bring violence to law enforcement, to innocent civilians, or anyone that would threaten public officials in this state or anywhere in this country.
Now, this, as you just pointed out, is one of a number of visits from the Trump-Pence team, and today I was told to expect this to be a regular occurrence right through Election Day.
Certainly you're going to be on a first-name basis with these candidates by the time November 3rd rolls around, Rick.
Yeah, it's got a bit of that feel from 4 years ago, Brian, where, as you know, they started in the last 8 to 15 days of just blitzing the state. I think Mike Pence was in Michigan 6 out of the last 7 days, including Election Day, in the run-up to that last election. So it kind of feels like a page from 4 years ago playbook.
Certainly. You sense they may be seeing something, and thus the increased intention.
Maybe.
All right, Rick. Thank you.